In other lines of research, he explores the interaction between language and socio-emotional aspects of development, such as immigration, gender, and various preschool educational environments. Today, he will share with us more about the topic of bilingual community-based language pedagogy, introducing an Arab-Jewish language cafe in Jerusalem. Please help me welcome Dr. Kedar.
All right. So thank you, Angelica. Thank you very much for the invitation and for the introduction. What I'm going to present today is very untypical, I would say, of my work. It has to do with adults and very far from what I'm usually looking at, which is much younger ages, language development, cognitive development, and so on. But I think it will be, I'm taking you to a pretty far place from here, which is called Abu Tor. Abu Tor is a neighborhood in Jerusalem, and it's one of the very few places in Jerusalem where Jews and Palestinians live in the very same area. I'm getting this sound. Now, for me, the whole thing is a bit personal, and this is how I actually started this study. I was born and raised in Jerusalem, and like just 1 mile, even less, from this neighborhood. And when I heard about this very unique project that I'm going to present today, I just had to go there and see what's going on, because it is very unique. You can see that there's a Pepsi can right here, and you may wonder if I'm doing some advertising in my free time, but no. Why am I showing this Pepsi's can? Because when I was a child, my friend and I used to collect cans, like beverages. I don't know why, really. It wasn't like a common thing to do, but that was our thing. And we had all kinds, all flavors, whatever you want. But at that time, Pepsi and all its products, like 7-Up and so on, were not sold in the Jewish part of Jerusalem because of the Arab boycott and some political issues. So this was a very precious thing to find, right? So today it's really unbelievable, but as really young children, there were no cell phones, the parents didn't know where we are. We just wandered around and got to this neighborhood, Abu Tor, and just looked for Pepsi cans and 7-Up cans. Today it sounds a bit crazy, but that's how it worked, and we were fine. Nothing happened. Now, Abu Tor is, as I said, it's a very unique neighborhood because mostly in Jerusalem, you have the Arab neighborhoods in the east and the Jewish neighborhoods in the west, okay? And Abu Tor sits right in the middle, and its eastern side is Arab Palestinian, and its western side is Israeli Jewish. Now, when I'm saying Jews and Arabs live together, it's not exactly this way, right? It's not like a one community thing and shared life thing. Mostly, the two societies are separated. Each has its own stores, shops, services, and so on. It's a pretty small neighborhood, as you can see, only 13,000 Arabs and 2,000 Jews. And we want to talk about language, but language is always connected to culture and, at least in my area, to politics as well, but everywhere, I guess. So let me just give you a brief intro on what we're talking about, where we are. So this is Israel here. This is Jerusalem, the old city of Jerusalem. The eastern part of Jerusalem was occupied by Israel in this 1967 war. And that includes the old city of Jerusalem, which is, of course, the most problematic area because all religions and all countries want this area. It's important to everyone. Now, over 25, although the eastern part of Jerusalem was annexed to Israel, 25 of the eastern Jerusalemites are residents and not citizens. Why? Because they're experiencing pressure from both Israel that, doesn't want them to become citizens, and from the Palestinian Authority, which also doesn't want them to become Israeli citizens. So they're really stuck in the middle, I would say. Now, for a while, that was the case, and like you could really see two countries in just like crossing a few meters from side to side. But as time passes, we're talking about 1967. So think about today's children, teenagers, undergrad students. They don't care more, they want to live. They just want to live, and they're looking for the best options. And in our country, the best options are inside Israel. So it's not that they're all rushing to become citizens, but many are trying now. And even if they're not trying to become citizens, they're more and more, we see them more and more taking part in workplaces, academic institutions, and so on in the western side of Jerusalem and in Israel in general. So that's the trend or pattern in the last 2 decades, I would say. Now, unfortunately, as you all know, the Middle East, Israel, and above all, Jerusalem is a very explosive conflict, like never-ending conflict-driven area. And this is what you usually hear and see about this city, which is not true, okay? Because in daily life, this is not what you see. But the tension is there, of course. Now, I just happened to stumble on this very exciting project taking place in Abu Tor. I'm not going to show you this video, but this is a nice video that they made, which kind of explains and shows the activities that are done under the Good Neighbors project, okay? And this is a project that what's unique about it is that it came from the people, okay? It's not a government thing, not like, some American institute trying to, bring peace to the Middle East, nothing like that at all, but real Abu Tor residents, both Jewish and Arabs. And that is a miracle, I would say, really. You have to live in Jerusalem to understand just how separated the two communities are. Although, as I said, the younger ones are maybe getting there, but it's a real special thing. And they're doing so many things. They're teaching languages in a structured way, giving Hebrew and Arabic and English lessons to people, but many other community activities, as you can see here, football team, soccer, Abu Job, a job placement project, street library, drama group, and many others, okay? A big success, again, on a small scale, but still, I mean, I wish we had more things like that. But we're going to focus on one specific aspect or activity of this project, which is the language cafe. So it started up as some kind of an addition to the structured language lessons, just to give people the chance to communicate as they're doing right here. But then in 2018, it actually became a separate thing, and it started to draw more and more people, including people, especially the Palestinians, who do not live in that neighborhood. Okay, so the word spread, and people started to show up. So far, about 150 Jewish and Palestinian individuals have attended these sessions. They also have a Facebook page where you can follow their activities. Okay, now just a bit of theory before we move to the actual findings and what we did there. We know that language learning as a child, as an adult, it doesn't matter, is always affected by social and political context. And it's tied to the learner's cultural, national, and self-identity aspects. We also know, at least from some studies, that bilingual teaching programs have been found to enhance learners' values and perceptions such as tolerance and positive attitudes towards other ethnic groups, self-confidence, and self-identity. But what's really special here, I think, at least from what I know, in the model that was built or has grown somehow like in a bottom-up way here, is that it kind of mixes formal and informal language learning settings or strategies. So, formal strategy settings are what we have here, for example, and in many other institutions. And informal settings are unstructured or based on a semi-structured process, which is less rigid than formal language learning. In Europe, the language cafe model is pretty common, but it doesn't work like in this case. It is usually sponsored by the city council or some kind of a community institution. And again, this was not the case here. Okay, let me skip a bit here. Okay, let's talk a bit more about what it means to want to learn Arabic or want to learn Hebrew if you're an Arab or if you're Jewish, okay? Now, knowing Arabic for the majority of the Jewish community in Jerusalem and in Israel in general is not considered like an asset, right? It's not considered like something that you need. Parents will pay lots of money for their children to learn English, but you never see them paying money for private lessons in Arabic, although it's all around us and so important, but no. Also, what used to be the case in Israel, we have Jewish immigrants from all over the world, including the Arab world. So in the early decades of the state of Israel, many people knew Arabic, like the people who came from Iraq, Iran, Morocco, many other countries, they knew Arabic. So it wasn't so rare to find a Jewish person speaking Arabic. But as time went by, the next generation, they know Hebrew, and the Arabic was lost, unfortunately. Now you can see tiny, tiny places and groups where they're trying to revive both the Arabic for the Jewish people who came from Arab countries and Yiddish for the Eastern European Jews. So that's from the Jewish side. Now for the Palestinians, knowing Hebrew is much more important. Why? Because of course it's the dominant language, it's the majority language, but they're facing a lot of pressures, okay? Even if you want to learn Hebrew, you have to deal with social pressures, political pressures, and in some cases, it may even like be a real life threat, you know, in some specific, not in Abu Tor, but from people, Palestinians who live in the occupied territories, that's like a risk that you're taking. So you can understand that while the Jewish participants in this cafe are, okay, they're making a step, but not taking a big risk, I would say. For the Palestinians, it's very different, at least for some of them. Okay. So this research is, I've done it with, and still doing it with my colleague Orly Haim. And what we're interested in are several aspects of the process. One is the motivations. What drives people to do this very unique thing of forming this group and maintaining it and so on. And we're basically more interested in their intrinsic motivations because, you know, the external motivations are pretty clear, especially for the Palestinians, as I said, just to get around, to I don't know, to know what to say when you go shopping and so on. So what are the goals here? One is pedagogy, right? That's a pretty unique model that I'm going to show you, kind of developing from scratch by a very small group of motivated individuals. So what have they come up with? It's really interesting. Maybe we can learn from them some new techniques. That's one thing. And then, as I said, the psychological aspects of the Language Cafe members. So what are the motivations? What are their attitudes? And are these attitudes towards everything, towards being with the other side, learning from the other side, and so on? Do they change with time as they attend the Language Cafe? And the last one, which I'm not going to show today, both because of time and also because we're still analyzing it, is a linguistic analysis, okay, to see what they actually learn, what they actually say. I'm going to give you some examples, but that's not the focus today. Okay, so who are these people and how did it all start? Basically, it started with an American couple who was moved to Israel, I think 10 years ago or so. They're Jewish and they found themselves in Abu Tor. And maybe that's what you need in order to start things. Someone from the outside who's like, kind of like me and my friend as children, just going there innocently and, you know, not thinking about the whole scary stuff and so on. And they started talking to their neighbors. But it became obvious pretty soon for them that, wow, there's a clear separation. There's one road in the middle of the neighborhood where on one side it's Arabs, on the other side it's Jews. It's not that they're fighting, right? They're neighbors, but that's about it, right? Different worlds. We know it we see it in other places, of course, in the world, even here in the States, maybe not different, you know, peoples, but just different social classes or whatever. Okay. So one of the women started this whole thing and started gathering some people, both Arab and Jewish, and then they found people from the neighborhood who were willing to be kind of part of it and being tutors. Okay, they're not teachers. They have no certification at all, no experience at all, but they just managed to do it and very successfully, as you will see. So they have 2 tutors. I think this is like the 3rd generation now of tutors. But what they're always doing is having one Arabic speaker and one Hebrew speaker. Okay. So right now, the ones that we interviewed, Anne is the Jewish tutor, and she has been involved in this project from the very beginning. L1 is Hebrew, but also proficient in Arabic and English. S, the Palestinian, actually came as a student or a member to these sessions, and she was really good. You can see that she knows like 4 languages, and she just naturally became a tutor for working alongside her Jewish companion. How does it work? Participants come in once a week, usually, approximately 15 to 20 participants per session, kind of divided equally between the 2 nationalities. But we see a wide range of age groups and different backgrounds. The Palestinians in general tend to be younger. And this, of course, is related to what we call the extrinsic or external motivations, right? They just need the language more. And the older ones are usually the Jewish participants. As I said, occasionally participants from outside the neighborhood also come and join. Most Palestinian participants are women, and it's pretty much equal in the Jewish community. Okay. As I said before, for the Palestinians, it's not trivial at all. And you need to understand the kind of legal, political background here again. So some are Israeli citizens. Okay, so that's not a big deal, not too much of a deal. Some are permanent residents, like East Jerusalem permanent residents. And this may be a big deal depending on your specific family, attitudes, political background, and so on. And the last group is people who come from the actual Palestinian Authority areas. And for them, it's, they won't go back home and tell everyone about what they did and how it went. Okay. As you can see, like all of us, they switched to Zoom during the pandemic, of course. So we collect the data for 10 months, and COVID came right in the middle, but still we were able to collect some data. And what is it based on? So first, just guided observations of research assistants that we sent there, and field notes. We collected or documented their language learning materials. What do they actually use during sessions? We conducted in-depth, semi-structured interviews with the project's leaders or tutors. We're not sure about how to call them because they insist on being, just members. We're just, I don't know, hosting the whole thing, but we're not special at all, but they are. And then we had interviews with 3 Jewish and 3 Palestinian participants. And this is the part that is still going on. Okay, so you can see how it looks like. They're using, in most cases, they're using like a board, nothing very, very technological. We had 13 sessions observed, and some were recorded. And this is what happens during those sessions. Where is it? Not here. Okay, here it is. So a typical session lasts about 2 hours, okay, and includes the following parts. They gather an open activity initiated by the Language Café tutor. Then they split into pairs, Palestinian and Jewish in each pair. And then a closing activity, drawing on their own, the participants' selected language learning outcome or goals or interest. And again, this is all what we call bottom up. It was initiated and just developed by the people themselves. When they split into pairs, each participant serves once as a student and once as a teacher. Okay, so like, of course, each one in their own native language. Now this is interesting. The tutors said that this is free, like you can say and talk about anything you want, but at the same time, they're always on the guard. Like they're very, very careful because, you know, you just need one word that is misunderstood by the other side and feelings get, emotions get high. So they're, on one hand, they're giving them a free hand. On the other hand, they're kind of trying to be really thoughtful about what are we going to talk about and kind of avoiding sensitive cultural political issues. So for instance, even this pairing up, right? Like, okay, let's split into pairs. That's not trivial at all, because if someone is, for example, most of the Jewish participants are secular, or at least not very religious. Some of the Palestinian women are very religious. So of course, in that case, you wouldn't pair a young Palestinian woman with an Jewish man. Okay. Oops. One example, just to so that you understand how, you know, fragile this whole thing is. This is like the most extreme instance that they had. So in one lesson, the Palestinians didn't show up, and like everyone was shocked. And what happened was that they came to a conclusion that one of the Jewish participants worked for the Israeli secret services. And who knows, maybe they're right. The tutors didn't think so, but you can never know. So this is, again, just to let you understand how far this context is from what you probably know around here. Yeah. They had a talk but that person did not return. Yeah. So this is why I'm saying maybe they're all right. You know, who knows? Okay, here's another principle. Again, they're not presenting it this way, but this is what we came up with about their kind of ideology or learning strategy. They keep asking and encouraging the participants to be an active source of language and cultural knowledge, okay? Both in the pair group and in the whole group sessions. Here's a nice example. So in one of the sessions, the language tutor asked one of the Hebrew-speaking participants to tell the group about the Jewish holiday Hanukkah, okay? Because the Arabs saw, you know, all the candles and lights, and they never actually knew, although it's just in front of them, but they never knew what it meant. And of course, it goes the other way as well. So she did. But then an Arabic speaker was asked to retell the same content in Hebrew. Okay, so you can see how it's both the language, but always around some cultural, something that relates to them. really. Overall, I must admit, to my big surprise, before I tell you what we found here, in most cases, for example, in Israel, we have this beautiful project which is called Hand in Hand, okay, and that's an Arab-Israeli bilingual education network. It started with one school. Now they have several schools and kindergartens. It's a beautiful thing. But over there, what you see, despite all the efforts, is that in most cases, the Arab children would learn Hebrew nicely. The Hebrew-speaking children, not as much. Why? Again, it's like Spanish and English here, right? You know, it's much easier to get English here than Spanish, so it's the same thing. But here, they insist, and it seems to work. So we see equality, equity, and bidirectional respect that influences the language learning. So we could really not find any bias or anything going in favor of Hebrew here. No, it really seems to be equal. They told us that they even, the tutors, that they even insist on equal time, like very strict about that, so that no language gets more minutes of exposure or practice than the other. As I said, the entire learning process is strongly embedded within the social, cultural, and conflictual geopolitical context of the Israeli-Palestinian society. So there's a cause here, okay? On one hand, as I said, you must be really sensitive, and they are. But on the other hand, you know, we know where we live and we know the circumstances. So they have like a real purpose here beyond just learning a language. And that is to promote good neighboring relationship. And this is why it's not only about the language cafe. You could see in the beginning that it's a whole range of activities. Okay, what about their motivation, right? What brings someone to attend? And usually, from what we've heard, there's like a fixed, you know, core basis of participants who are just there always. And the others are kind of coming and going. Sometimes they're there for 3 months, then they disappear, but some come back. So what brings people over there? Some say that as residents of Abu Tor, they have common shared interests despite the division. You can see a quote from Sami, a Palestinian participant here. They're in my neighborhood. I want to get to know them. I want to learn about their culture. It is nice to know each other. Esti, a 73-year-old Jewish woman, speaking about the Palestinians' motivation. I was shocked to find out that there are so many young Arab guys who are interested in improving their Hebrew. Of course, as I said, it's not only intrinsic. Some people, especially the ones who come and go, I would say, do come for a reason, which is fine. Of course, it's nothing bad about it, like for an extrinsic reason. So for example, Suha, a Palestinian woman, saying, I worked at a few places that require Hebrew proficiency. When I go to the supermarket, to the mall, to the hospital, I must use Hebrew. There are, by the way, Arab signs all over, but in the end, you need to speak to people, right, in those places, and they don't know Arabic. There will not always be an interpreter, like someone to translate it for me. I would like to understand what they're saying. I want to be able to speak and understand. In terms of attitudes and also political views, both Jewish and Palestinian participants express very, I would say, positive attitudes toward the learning situation, and also report that they successfully implement and use the knowledge that they've gained in their everyday life. Feelings of enjoyment, absorption, and fulfillment. They also emphasize and appreciate in the interviews, of course, the mutual process of learning, kind of like this equal approach. Yeah, this is what we heard from the actual participants. So you can see a few more quotes. This one from Esti, this Jewish woman. So to summarize, again, this is ongoing. I would be happy to share the more linguistic aspects of the study later on. But focusing on the actual pedagogical model here, very exciting, very surprising, stemming up from bottom up, like from actual people. No, initiative from any institution or anything like that. It allows each participant to learn and teach. They're both learners and teachers, so shared responsibility of the other's language and culture. Despite the long-standing political tensions, the tutors have created a safe learning environment that allows participants to feel at ease while taking into account sensitive cultural and political issues. By the way, each of these pictures that you see as I go are amazing. I mean, you don't see it, right? Especially with the religion aspects taken into account, like religious Palestinian women with Israeli men. That never happens. So, so even in that respect, just bringing people together, forget about language learning and so on, just having them sharing one space for 2 hours, that's amazing. Participants expressed genuine interest to learn the language and culture of the other national, religious, and cultural group. And they emphasized that they have gained not only conversational skills, but also novel insights about each other's cultures, which maybe is, at the end of the day, even more important, again, from just the language. So this is hopefully a strong thing that keeps going on. You can check them out on their website. You can support them if you like. I have no, yeah, I'm not advocating for them, but I really appreciate what they're doing, what they've done there. And again, just theoretically, this goes along with a line of research showing that intergroup contact may reduce prejudice, tensions between groups in conflict zones. We have some evidence for that, and our evidence seems to fit in. And that's about it. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for this very inspiring talk. We need more good neighbors. I think we need many more programs like this that really bring people together. So we have a comment here on Zoom.
Sure.
Mijang, one of the Korean lecturers, senior lecturers here, says, I'm so impressed by their community effort for resilience between very different communities with historical and political backgrounds. It's a great idea to avoid the political issues from the topics. even in Korean families, we avoid the political issues since it may lead to lengthy quarrel and harm the relationship. Also, Mi-jung agrees on the focus, to focus more on the personal communication than linguistic accuracy. So I had a few questions here. How did you first start engaging with this project? Like, you just stumbled upon it and you were interested and you wanted to look at like, how does the project work, or can you say a little bit more about like your specific involvement in this?
Okay, so my own involvement is first, as I said, personal, because this is where I grew up. So I'm very interested in what's happening there. But specifically in Beth Barrel College, where that's my institution, there's a very strong emphasis on shared life, Arab, Jewish shared life in Israel. Many programs, unlike most Israeli institutions, we have, I would say, almost an equal number of Jews and Arabs studying and teaching together. And we have a center for shared life. And this is, I think, the first time where I've heard about this project in Jerusalem from the shared life people in Beth Barrel. So, it sparked my interest, and that's how it went. By the way, at first, it wasn't so easy to get them to collaborate, because for them, although you're saying that you're coming from Beth Barrel and so on, any exposure is, risky, right? Who knows what it can bring. If we have it working, why? But in the end, we managed to convince them. Yeah.
I had a couple of other questions here. And if anybody on Zoom has questions, please raise your hand or put your questions in chat. I assume the interviews that you conducted in the L1 of the participant, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. Of course.
So we saw a lot of the pictures of where the participants met, and sometimes you mentioned that it would be potentially in people's homes.
Right, yeah.
Were there ever times where the group would cook together, or was that left out and it was just the 2 hours focusing on just the communication and sharing culture?
Yeah, I mean, so not in these sessions because they're
COVID.
It's focused. No. I think it's even before, regardless of COVID, just because they're focused on the actual learning things. So they will have coffee and cookies, but not more than that. But I do know that in other activities of this larger, broader Good Neighbors project, they do have some cooking and exchanging recipes, and yeah.
And so in that larger Good Neighbors community, would they also, like, I'm wondering, with the physical location, do you ever take advantage of anything within the immediate physical community? Like, we always talk about when we bring groups of learners together to take field trips, to look at something that's representative of culture X or culture Y. Is that possible in that particular?
Yeah, for sure. You could see just a few pictures from the outdoor, where they do all kinds of things, and they do visit each other's homes. Again, not all of them, but some. Yeah.
So there is one question here in chat. Mi-jung is asking, are the participant numbers growing? What do you project for the future of this community-based partnership between these two communities? And also, are the numbers from both communities even? If you can talk about that again.
Yeah, so yeah, in terms of numbers, they're pretty much equal. It changes all the time, but pretty much it's equal. In terms of this project growing, my feeling is that it's good as it is, just because it's a neighborhood thing, because most of the participants are sharing the same community, or at least the same physical space. But I did hear just recently that they're trying to take this model and implement it in other areas, not only in Jerusalem, but other areas in Israel as well, which will be great. But again, you need those few people to kind of, start a, yeah.
Do they advertise that this exists, the Language Cafe, or is it more, I mean, you said it's an entire grassroots effort, right?
Right.
So is it basically, somebody might bring a new participant or?
For sure, yeah. It's like friends bringing friends. But as I said, they have like this Facebook page. It's not like, undercover. But at the same time, it's not, I don't know, again, depending on specific participants, but it's not something that many of them would go and tell all their friends, okay? Yeah.
So what are some takeaways for you, or, something that other communities could think of or consider? Like, what are some important tips and tricks? Like, what are the nuggets that you take away if somebody were interested in starting something similar? And maybe taking out the particular political context here, but just thinking, about, especially in a US context where we think about maybe connecting speakers of the languages that we teach here.
Right.
What are some of the takeaways in bringing people in the community together in a more informal way?
So I would say two main things. One is a true interest. Okay, I mean, you need that at least the core of the group would be really, really interested and devoted to the cause, which again is not only about language in this specific case, at least. And the other aspect is responsibility. So make or responsibility and people being active, right? So you could see that they insist that each person over there, whether they're shy or not, whether they're good in Hebrew or Arabic or not, they insist of them teaching the other person, sharing their thoughts with the whole group, and that works, right? I mean, when people are not just staring at you like in a typical standardized language class, we all know that, but you actually give them a role, and they know that the whole concept is built on everyone doing it, then it works, right? But again, I mean, these two tutors are, it's easy to say, but it's hard to do, right? Yeah.
So one more question here on chat. What other topics do they talk about other than holidays or customs? Are there more specific topics that you can share with us?
Yeah, I mean, it's really everything from everyone's lives, it could be some kind of routines, kind of like practicing routines. What do I say when I enter the hospital? What do I say when I enter a shop? Things like that to get around. It can be about food, as you said, everything basically, except, again, trying to avoid the political issue. Yeah.
Wonderful. Are there any other questions? So there's thank yous that are filing in here on Zoom. People are very appreciative of the work that you do and that this project does. And we're all crossing our fingers and pressing our thumbs that this keeps going.
Yeah, it looks pretty solid. So,
yep,
yeah.
and lots of thumbs up too. Yes.
I'm curious about error correction, especially in a context like this. Is it
about what? Sorry again?
Error correction. Like, are they correcting one another's mistakes? Is that something that's avoided? Is that something they're doing explicitly, or are they doing mostly recasts? Are they eliciting? What's going on in that?
So yeah, that's a great question. So I would say that in the pair group, it happens naturally. You know, we couldn't find like a very consistent pattern here. It depends on the two specific individuals and the chemistry and so on. But basically, it happens naturally. Sometimes more, sometimes less. With the tutors, it happens much more. I mean, they will in the whole class sessions, they will correct.
When I think you pointed out that accuracy is not
Right.
necessarily the main goal, right? I mean, the main goal is to bring the two groups together, right?
Yeah. By the way, some of these participants also take the more formal classes, so they get it over there.
Is that offered through the Good Neighbors or through different?
Yeah.
Like
it's all
So they do
independent.
the Good Neighbors project does offer formal
Yeah.
language classes
Yeah.
as well. Got it.
They
Okay.
have formal. We're with an Arabic teacher teaching Arabic.
Yep. Great.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, everybody, please help me in thanking Yarden.
Yeah, you got it,
the
Yarden.
backer, Yarden. Thank you so much. This is
Thank
a
you.
wonderful project.
Thank
So
you. Happy to be here.
when you go back home,
Mm-hmm.
do you think you will continue to follow, this project? Maybe get involved in it too?
I'm pretty sure I will. Yeah.
Wonderful. Great.
Yeah.
So thank you all for joining today, either in person or online. A quick reminder about our next talk, which is on April 13th at 4 p.m. about American Sign Language. So everything you've ever wanted to know about that. So we hope to see you then. And thank you for joining today.